Hi, I'm Warren Geller. At Englewood Hospital and Medical Center, we believe that all citizens need to be informed about the healthcare issues that affect their lives. That's why we're proud to support the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Prudential Financial's Global Communications Department, TD Bank, NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation, Englewood Hospital and Medical Center, Suez, ready for the resource revolution, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor. Insurance fraud costs New Jersey families $1,300 a year. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com. And by HipNewJersey.com. Live hard, work hard, play hard. You're from New Jersey, and so are we.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Steve Adubato, coming to you from WNET's Tisch Lincoln Center studio. We are honored to welcome Chris Matthews, the one and only Chris Matthews.
I hope I'm the one and only.
Yeah, Chris has seen a hardball every night, 7?
Yes.
I know, I check it every night.
Every night.
But we're here to talk about your book. Bobby Kennedy, A Raging Spirit. Talk to us. This book, so powerful in so many ways. Why Bobby Kennedy?
Well, I didn't realize when I began the project years ago that it would become the 180 degrees of what we have right now. Empathy, unity of white and black together, a moral compass, all the things we miss right now, we lack right now, we want in our leadership. And he wasn't a perfect man, but he exemplified those things. He could walk into what we used to call a ghetto situation in Indianapolis and tell these people right in front of them, African Americans, Martin Luther King was just shot and killed by a white guy. He had to tell them. They didn't know that. And I had the mic, because of working with NBC. You could hear him on the mic saying, the guy next to him, he's up on a flatbed truck, looking in the faces of the people, and they're all cheering him. And he goes, do they know yet? And the guy says, no, they don't know. You got to tell them. And this is before Twitter and everything. And you had word of mouth was the way you learned the news. And it showed his ability to connect with people when he just took his skin off and said, look, my brother was killed by a white guy. We got to get through this. We got to figure this thing out. And, and he talked about, we got to make an effort. I thought that line in that speech, we got to make an effort, is the best thing anybody's ever said. Because when it comes to race relations, all you can do is make an effort. You're not going to solve it. You're not going to, but if everybody makes an effort, wow. And he, but he had guts. He'd go to college kids like at Notre Dame and say, you guys are sitting here on your fat butts with your college deferments, and the working guys out there going to war. He'd go to lumberjacks in Oregon, in Roseburg, right, where they had that shooting a couple years ago, mass shooting, and say, we got to stop this mail-order rifle buying, in those days.
Where do they get that, Chris? I mean
guts to just taking on Giancana, making fun of a mob guy. He was Al Capone's successor.
Get this book. You got to the complexity. I mean, by the way, Chris Matthews, how many books have you written about?
This is 8. Third on the Kennedys.
Third on the Kennedys.
Yeah.
There is no one in this country who knows more, understands more, connects more. The Irish Catholic piece of this for me was so powerful. Yeah. You related.
Well, because I was born 20 years later than Bobby, and yet, and obviously weren't rich. We're regular middle people growing up in Philly.
Tell folks where you grew up.
I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, right on the border with Bucks County. My father worked for the city. He wrote down what happened in court. Wow. 4 brothers, but very Catholic. And things like grilled cheese sandwiches, like you just, tomato soup, Campbell's tomato soup on Saturday. Just talking about Bishop Sheen, who was on New York here all the time, the New York bishop. And these things we all had in common. The Coconut Grove fire in Boston in '42 when the BC team was about to have its celebration. But Holy Cross beat them.
Right?
Yeah, and Holy Cross beat them, so they weren't there for the fire. And God delivered, and being angry about Al Smith losing the election in '28.
The first Catholic to be up
all those things,
president.
my mom especially, was
that
all...
mattered.
It was very much part of our tribal thinking.
Did it matter to the Kennedys? Because in the book, you also say that Joe Kennedy did not. I mean, he had a whole. I don't
He
know.
voted for Hoover.
He voted for Hoover
Yeah.
against the Catholic.
Yeah, I know.
Al Smith.
Because he thought the Catholic was too street corner, too East Side, West Side, too much of a New York accent. He didn't like the fact that he blew kisses at people in crowds. He didn't like that sort of, Tammany show-off thing. He was trying to be a Yankee.
You think he was better?
I think he thought he was
And Bobby,
definitely.
because the whole
Bobby
thing,
didn't. Bobby was a regular. Ethel said to me, Bobby was born a Democrat, meaning lowercase d, regular guy. One of the reasons I get into writing the book when they asked me to write it at Simon & Schuster was I was a Capitol Hill cop, my first job back from the Peace Corps, and I was working at night as a cop. It was a patronage job. I had a gun and a uniform, but really I was doing it for the political job in the daytime. And I got hanging around with this guy, the Capitol engineer, and he said, he'd been working there for years. He said, the only liberal Democratic senator who always said hello to the cops was Bobby Kennedy. And I go, wow. I thought he was just a guy for minorities. Why did he care about all these West Virginia former MP types? Bobby cared about people who had, he liked waitresses, he liked firemen, firefighters, cops, construction workers.
Different from Jack?
Jack was more an aristocrat. Jack's all... all Jack's friends were like Charlie Bartlett, fifth generation Yale, Stuart Ormsby Gore, David Ormsby Gore, the British aristocrat, Ben Bradley. They were all titled people. And then they were good people, but they weren't regular guys. Bobby's friends were like Rayford Johnson, Rosie Greer, the jocks, Jim Whittaker, the mountain climber, John Glenn, Andy Williams. People of accomplishment. I think he liked people that showed physical guts because he's trying to find out where to find it for himself. Finding courage by hanging around with people of courage.
This is one of the things.
That was a big part of him.
By the way, get this book. It is fascinating on so many levels. One of the things that really struck me. People assumed, so many assumed, Jack and Bobby very close. In the book, unless I have this wrong, Chris, they were not close for a long time, but got close at critical points in Jack's career when Jack needed Bobby.
Well, open up the book and just show that inside cover, because that just tells you everything.
Do it.
The publisher had me do this. If you
Bob
look
Morris,
at
our director, get that shot.
If you look at the family here, so look how older. Here's Bobby, mommy's pet, because his dad had no time for him. And look at his brothers. His brothers are grown-ups. There's Joe. He's a grown-up. And Jack, too. These are young adults, and Bobby's this
Teddy
kid.
not even in the picture,
8 years,
really.
and here's still Teddy looks like a little girl there. Look at him, the baby in the family.
Big difference in age.
Yeah, and so they weren't hanging. He was at the little kids' table. I mean, Jean, I got that from Jean, his sister. She was there. That's her, Jean.
Right.
They were in the little kids' table, but Bobby would beg his father, can't you write letters to me like you do to Joe and Jack about the big picture in the world? Spend some time. His father called him a runt. Imagine telling your kid who's 5'8", about average, a little lower than average, and his two brothers are big 6-footers, and they're calling the kid a runt. Just dismissed him.
Why was Joe so mean to him?
He had no use for him.
No, what do you mean no use?
The older kid was going to be president.
Joe was going to be president.
And then Jack was going to be president.
Joe was killed.
Yeah, and then
it
was Jack's turn, but it was never Bobby's turn. And the old man only liked tough.
But Bobby was tough.
He became tough for the old man. I believe he started off as a sweet young kid. He hung around. All his basketball playing friends were African American kids this is in the 30s, which is pretty impressive. He always showed, he'd be riding along on a train with his classmate at school, and he'd go, he said, with Dad, can't we do something for these people, these poor people? His father said, forget about it. One time somebody said, Bobby's got a lot of generosity. And the old man said, I don't know where he got that from.
The
old man was not a nice guy.
Chris, he did not see it as a virtue?
No, Joe Kennedy was not a nice guy. But Bobby tried to become tough. He played football at Harvard. He won a letter. He played till he broke his leg in second year. And by the way, that's before the Ivy League. The Ivy League is what it is now, but sort of above club football. But the fact is, back in those days, his team was 18th in the country one time that year. So it was real football, and he was playing on the varsity first team.
Bigger picture.
And the old man liked that stuff.
As someone who watches your show on a regular basis, learns from it, challenged by it, this country today and Bobby Kennedy, I know it's ridiculous because it was 1968 when he was killed, and we think so many years later. What could he contribute today, theoretically, to the ridiculous divide in this country?
You know what he would do? Because the right is pretty much racial, and it's class. You want to become a Democrat, go to college. That's what it's like now. You have to be a bit elite to be a Democrat now. And the working class whites have given up on the Democratic elite, and they've gone off to vote for Trump, or they voted for Reagan before that. I think he would have tried to keep. He would do things like he'd drive through the city of Gary, Indiana, which is not like in the movie Music Man. It's an old industrial city with an ethnic population, most Eastern Europeans and blacks coming in, just like it happens in most cities. The migration's going on. But he would ride through the city with Richard Hatcher, the first African-American mayor, on one side of him in a convertible, and Tony Zale, the former middleweight champion who had fought Graziano 3 times. And the other side, just to show, I'm with both you guys, we got to work together. And we make these vivid, symbolic statements about working together in both communities. He wouldn't take sides.
What do you take Trump on?
I mean, Trump basically is taking the white community side, and he's taking the very hardline pro-Israeli position on this latest thing. He takes sides. I think Bobby really tried to avoid that. I think he tried to.
But he stood up. But he stood up on the segregation issue.
On issues and values, but I think he tried to bring and he didn't hate anybody, and he didn't put people down. There's no Archie Bunker in his thinking, by the way. I'm a big on that. I'm big thinking on that. Once the Archie Bunker thing started in the 70s, early 70s, where the better educated whites started looking down on the working class whites, and he was basically Irish Bunker. We all knew that. It was basically sort of an Irish guy living in Queens. That sort of division really has gotten really aggravated right now. I mean, West Side, you ever on the West Side, I think people look down on those guys and they go, they're just a bunch of deplorables. Remember Hillary's word? Deplorable? And Obama liked it. He did the same thing. He said they cling to their guns and their religion. Well, you don't make fun of somebody because of their religion.
You relate. It's interesting. You relate, at least my perception of you over the years, Chris, is that you relate to those who not only did not vote for Hillary Clinton and may not have liked Trump, but chose to vote for him because they feel lost. You relate to them.
Yeah, I do.
Because of your background?
I think they knew about a party that was being held. Carole King was singing. Everybody's up at Martha's Vineyard having a great time, celebrating themselves and how successful they are. Meryl Streep's being mentioned positively. This kind of elite cultural meritocracy where everybody's made it, which is okay. But the trouble with that, having made it, is there's a sense of condescension to the people that haven't made it. And they hear it, even if it's not intended. They go, wait a minute, nice party. How come I'll never get invited?
Ohio,
I will never get invited.
Michigan, other places, they felt
well, just the suburbs of Philly and clearly Erie, Scranton. I think I've had relatives like this. And we don't even talk about it because I don't want to fight with I love them, my relatives. But I know they had this attitude of, oh, you think you're better than us? Good. We'll vote for the other guy. And I think that's really gotten to be politics today. It's out there. You can hear it. You can feel it. People voting for Trump, not out of economic interest. They want a raise. They want health care for their kids. They're worried about opiates. They're worried about these chemical problems getting into all the white neighborhoods, just like they're in the black neighborhoods. We know that.
But by the way, we're talking to Chris right around Christmas time, holiday season 2017. Go out and check out his book. You mind if I plug it again?
Keep at it.
I'm joking.
I do
Chris.
believe. I told you, Caroline Kennedy said once, you got to sell these out of the back of your car.
Tell folks, you don't make millions selling books. You make them one at a time.
You got to go sell them because, Jack Kennedy, the quote, all my Kennedy, Anna, he once said, why do you think, because he always believed in starting his campaigns early, he said, why do you think Coca-Cola advertises? Everybody knows there's Coca-Cola. You don't need it, but to remind people, because they're going to go shopping this week, oh, where's the Coke in the store? Get the Coke in the basket, in the shopping cart. So it's just to remind people, right now there are people thinking, what am I going to do for Uncle Joe? I think he watches Hardball, Last night I was writing some copy for my show last night. I said, we got 2 million people watch tonight. Get out there and show the power of the movement. My producer said, a little too much, Chris.
A little too much. By the way, Chris is sniffling, I should tell you, because it's about 40 degrees in the studio.
This is like David Letterman stuff.
Stop. What?
I'm sorry.
This is PBS.
You see, you don't even sweat. There's no schwitzing going on here on the
so
west
no
side.
Nixon stuff going on.
Well, I'll tell you the great story. So the second debate between Nixon and
Matthews
Kennedy.
has the best stories.
And Nixon's, he's Niagara Falls in the first debate, all over the face.
And Kennedy looked.
Yeah, Kennedy always looked like
Kennedy.
He didn't need any tan, he didn't need any lotion or anything, or makeup. By the way, Kennedy faked about on the makeup. He said, I don't want any makeup. And Nixon was afraid Kennedy would make fun of him as some sort of problem, was unmanly or something. Then Kennedy gets back into his room and they put the makeup on him. It's just so true. The second time, the Nixon people were in control. It was the NBC studios in D.C. The Nixon people had control of the studio for some reason. So they lowered to like now, here. This meat locker. You're looking for the bodies hanging up here. And so then Bobby ends up, Jack, and the other guy there is Bill Wilson, their media advisor. And Jack and Bobby go, what is going on here? We're freezing in here. And he goes running downstairs Nebraska Avenue at the studio and finds this Nixon guy standing there like a Dave, protecting the air conditioning unit. And they duke it out and get the temperature raised. No, but this is stuff goes on in politics. Remember Dukakis?
Yeah.
He wasn't a very tall guy.
You talking about Dukakis with the helmet in 1988?
He wasn't a very tall guy, so he wanted one of these mounds, these secret mounds behind the lectern.
And they raised them up?
Yeah. Well, they gave him that, but then they made sure there's a camera shot from the side to show he's up on a mound.
How do you know all this stuff?
Constant collection of threads.
But who was your mentor in the United States Congress that you worked for directly, you learned just a little bit from?
Tip O'Neill.
There it is. And
Tip O'Neill knew all this stuff.
And Tip and the Kennedys. Real connection.
Interesting conflict, but yet they got along.
Wow.
See, Tip was a townie, if you will. He was a local. The Kennedys came in, they swooped in, they got the seat. Jack would admit he was a carpetbagger. He moved in. He had gone to Harvard, which he said he was dictating his memoirs before he was killed. And Jack said, I was a student at Harvard, which was not exactly a plus in that district, because the regular people at Harvard,
Elitist.
Yeah.
The last thing on Bobby before I let you go.
Tip used to cut the lawn at Harvard. He'd be sitting down, this local kid from North Cambridge, with shears, sitting around, I can imagine right near a tree, shearing around the tree. Yeah. And the overseer, like Simon Legree, came along and said, off your ass, O'Neill. You got to do it on your knees, not on your butt.
Talking to Chris Matthews.
What do you think his attitude was to the Harvard kids, Tips?
I hear you. Exactly. He'd not appreciate it.
I don't think
I got to tell you, interviewing Chris Matthews is like, I shouldn't say this because they do pay me. It's like not working.
All right.
Because it's just listening and learning. And by the way, go out and get this book. The book is called, by the way, I love the cover.
Isn't it great?
The cover's, real quick,
do you like
go
that
ahead.
cover, the mat and the decal,
it's very artistic.
edge and the
powerful.
And the what else? The vanilla color. And then in this back, this is the
Take
heart
a look
of the
at
book.
that, Bob.
That's the book right there. That scene of dirt poor family.
As Bobby was, after he was killed.
Yeah,
the train was moving
and
through.
And the salute of that guy, that affectionate salute, and he getting his kid to do it. That's patriotism. That's gut patriotism that you feel. And they had that towards Kennedy. Yeah. And I think that's lost right now in politics. Nobody has that gut feeling about any of the leaders today.
Well, Chris Matthews is a patriot. I don't care whether you agree or disagree with his politics. He is a patriot and he loves this country.
Steve,
and he also is a big fan of PBS. I just said
actually,
that.
I am.
I know you. Of course you are.
Downton coming back?
Listen, stop. Leave it alone. Cut that out. I love Chris Matthews. You should too. Every night, 7. You mind if we play?
7 p.m.
MSNBC.
For like 25 years I've been doing this.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Right back right after this. Chris Matthews.
Thank you.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're pleased to be joined by Mr. Bob Santelli, founding executive director of the Grammy Museum, based in
Newark, New Jersey.
Because
Newark has a great legacy in music. It's one of the great jazz towns in all of America. It's close to New York City. And Newark's in my home state of New Jersey. Perfect.
Let's be more clear. By the way, as a proud son of Brick City, Newark, New Jersey, I also know you happen to be at a particular location in Newark which matters. Talk about it.
Sure. Prudential Center, which is home of the New Jersey Devils, but also one of the great up-and-coming concert centers in America. So there's a lot of great music that happens there. A lot of great Grammy artists perform there. It stands to reason we should have a Grammy Museum experience there.
Talk a little bit, Bob, about why the Grammys matter. By the way, 60th anniversary, right?
60th. 6-0.
Why do they matter?
Yeah. You know, look, when you think of music, not just here in America, but all across the world, the Grammy brand is world-renowned. It stands for artistic excellence. It stands for music education. It's all about making sure that music remains to be America's greatest cultural resource. And so by having a museum here in Newark, we have one in Los Angeles, which is the mothership. We have one in the Mississippi Delta. We have one in Nashville. The idea is to create a necklace of these small museums that also act as educational centers to basically make sure that American music remains #1.
Talk about some of the exhibits. I mean, I think about some of the extraordinary musicians, the artists that come out of New Jersey. Springsteen is the most obvious one, but there are so many others.
Oh, yeah. Well, it starts with Sinatra, right?
It starts with Sinatra. You're right. I apologize
to
the
you gotta start
chairman
with
of the board.
Chairman of the board. And actually, the Grammy Museum, a couple of years ago for the Sinatra Centennial, we had an exhibit that toured America. It was a great exhibit, and it was actually here in New York City. But You have Springsteen, you have John Bon Jovi, you have Whitney Houston, you have Wyclef Jean, you have great hip-hop artists, great jazz artists, going all the way back to the time of Count Basie, who was born in Red Bank. Jersey City has Kool and the Gang, you know, the Fugees in East Orange. So many artists have come out of here.
I'll tell you what, just the other night, I had to introduce, I was honored to introduce Max Weinberg from the East Street Band, who's just one of the greatest drummers ever, and again, a Jersey guy. Connected to it?
Well, you can actually go into the Grammy Museum in Newark and take a drum lesson with Max Weinberg.
No.
Yes, you can.
How? How does that work?
You learn through technology. You actually sit at a drum set, and Max will take you through the beat to Born in the USA, one of the great beats in all of rock and roll. So, the exhibit and the museum itself is really designed to not just celebrate the past, but it talks about the creative process and how music is made, and Max being a perfect example for drummers.
Yeah, let me ask you something. A little bit more about Wyclef Jean. Tell folks who he is for those who are not really clear on the artist, the man.
Wyclef Jean was a member of one of maybe the greatest rap group to come out of New Jersey, the Fugees. And along with Lauryn Hill, those are two pillars of New Jersey hip-hop history. However, Wyclef Jean has done things on his own as well. He has a brand new record out. He's a producer. He's a songwriter. He's a Renaissance man when it comes to music. And so you can go into the Grammy Museum in Newark and then work on a song and sing some songs with Wyclef as well. Teach you how the Fuji and Wyclef Jean process.
Give me a little real quick before I let you go. Ray Charles.
Ray Charles. When you get into Ray Charles, the coolest thing about the Grammy Museum in Newark is the fact that you get to sing Hit the Road, Jack, and you learn one of the great things about American music, which is call and response. Hit the road, Jack, don't you come back no more, no more.
That's right.
You'll learn how to do that, and you'll actually become one of the background singers in Ray Charles' song.
You know, it's interesting. We run as our not-for-profit production company runs an inner city based in Newark, leadership and communication development program. It happens to be called Stand and Deliver. You can check out our site to see it. I know that education, particularly for young people in Newark, is part of the museum.
That's right, it is. We try and work hand in hand with teachers, not just in Newark, but greater New Jersey and New York. One of the first things we did when we decided to move into Newark was to gather around teachers and say, how do we make this educationally relevant for you and your students? And one of the things that they learn there is critical analysis. They learn about self-expression, and they learn how music is one of the great forms of American identity. And so teachers are basically our partners in this, and we expect 15 to 20,000 students a year going through there.
This is the permanent location?
It is.
Good stuff. By the way, Prudential is pretty special place.
It is. It is. It is. And
tell folks again. So by the way, just check out where the Prudential Center is. Easy access to it. I don't want to plug too much, but I've been there for a whole range of not just the Devils, but Seton Hall University.
That's right.
Basketball. It's their home court as well. Listen, I want to thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're a Jersey City guy.
Jersey City guy, born and raised.
You appreciate this more than most. Bob Santelli, founding executive director of the Grammy Museum at the Prudential Center in beautiful Brick City, Newark, New Jersey. Thank you, Robert.
All right. Thank you,
well
Steve.
done.
Thanks.
Be right back after this.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're at the New Jersey Sharing Network 30th anniversary. It's their gala. It's a special event here at the Liberty Science Center. We're pleased to welcome Martha Anderson, Executive Vice President, Donor Services at MTF Biologics, which is?
It's the largest tissue bank in the country, and we're one of the partners with the New Jersey Sharing Network helping to sponsor this event.
Let's talk about tissue recovery, and because we often talk about the organ donation part of it, but let's talk about the tissue aspect of it.
Sure. So tissue means anything that's not an organ. For us, it means musculoskeletal tissue, which is bone, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, and skin. And we use those for a variety of different kinds of reconstruction and really, really important surgeries.
What impact does it have on people's lives? This is the gift of life.
It's absolutely the gift of life. We can use the donated skin for burn patients. We can use it to help a woman have her breast reconstructed after cancer surgery. It can be used in a child who has an orthopedic bone cancer that makes the difference between an amputation and a fully active life. It's a huge difference.
You know, people often think they understand, quote unquote, the corporate world, and you are in the corporate world. But beyond the bottom line aspect of being in the corporate world, this is a humane piece of it. What has it done for you personally to be a part of this?
Well, it's been huge for me, and actually I've been doing this work for the last 30 years. So I'm as old as the New Jersey Sharing Network in this field. And MTF Biologics is a nonprofit organization, and so we can be driven by doing the right thing all the time. We don't have to worry about the bottom line.
But you're a nonprofit.
We are, yes. Yes.
Explain that to folks. I mean, they'll say, well, how does that work? It's not a charity.
Well, actually, it is run just like a charity, or if you want to think about it, it's run like a blood bank. People can donate their blood to a blood bank, and there are costs associated with that. So when you get a blood transfusion at the hospital, it goes on your bill. It's the same thing with donated tissue. So for us, we have to cover our costs as the Sharing Network does, and then we can do all sorts of good things, but we don't have to worry about shareholders and stakeholders and things like that.
We in public television are a nonprofit, but are, like you, focused on the bottom line, but trying to make a difference. My final question is, what would you say to your colleagues at the Sharing Network as they celebrate this 30th birthday?
Well, what I would say is we're so proud to be partnering with you for the last 30 years, that over 4,000 donor families through your work have made the difference in hundreds of thousands of patients' lives in New Jersey and all around the country, and we're really, really pleased to be here and help you celebrate.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Prudential Financial's Global Communications Department, TD Bank, NJIT, New Jersey Sharing Network, Englewood Hospital and Medical Center, Suez, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Think this is absurd? Insurance fraud costs every New Jersey family over $1,300 every year. Report fraud at njinsurancefraud.org.